Hello ladies and gentlemen, Richard here, the creator of the Top Hat Gaming Man. Last week on this channel I appeared to have ruffled quite a few feathers for uploading a little opinion piece on why perhaps Nintendo didn't save the entire video game industry, which for some reason makes people upset because they like to look at history through a certain specific lens. And that is through the lens of a Nintendo fanboy, where they've got it in their head that apparently Nintendo saved the whole industry. Apparently, without Nintendo around, we would not have video games today. Imagine that. What a terrible world this would be if Nintendo never managed to monopolise the United States. Oh no! But yes, according to their logic, Nintendo saved the industry by monopolising a region where gaming was down at the time. This obviously was very clever of Nintendo, very opportunistic, and it indeed did inflate sales figures of games consoles to levels in which they'd never reached previously in said region. The whole thing was a massive success. So when people say Nintendo saved an industry, which suggests that there wouldn't be a video game industry if there was no Nintendo, do they really mean Nintendo was the first console to become truly popular within a region? So if that's all it takes for a manufacturer to save an entire industry, surely we can attach this same fanboyish logical lens to a number of other companies as well. Like surely, like what I'm going to do now, I can make a video simply on how Sega saved an entire video game industry, and I could probably do it for Sony, Atari and a number of other gaming companies as well. If you look at it through the right set of eyes, you can come to the same conclusion. And to be fair, many academic studies appear to be done the same way these days. Like look at stuff like gender studies and any kind of social study in general. It all depends on what lens you look through the situation at to come up with a conclusion that suits your views best. You can literally do this with anything, and people have been doing it with Nintendo for a long time. You look at it through your lens as Nintendo being a company that saved the gaming industry. Through my lens, I mainly look at it as a company that monopolised an industry. It depends how you look at it. So through my eyes, talking on behalf of Sega today, and no, I'm not a Sega fanboy, I thought I'd just add that in very quickly. I am simply going to tell this from the perspective of someone playing the role of a Sega fanboy, if that makes any logical sense to you at all. Because if you was in my games room, you would see there is probably more Nintendo stuff in here than there is Sega, and there is probably more Sony stuff in here than I say Sega as well, possibly even Microsoft too. Like I collect games, well I did collect games for every platform under the sun. So Sega, how did they save a video game industry? You can literally look at it in a similar way to how the Nintendo situation played out. If Sega never entered the US market with the Mega Drive, or the Genesis as they like to call it in that region, there would never have been a decent level of competition. Well, at that moment in time anyway, because that moment in time is all that matters when talking about companies that save whole industries. The butterfly effect, the logic with regards to that doesn't apparently apply. So Sega, in my opinion, as a Sega fanboy in this video, saved the industry by launching the Sega Genesis in the United States, because finally there was some competition brought to a market where only one company dominated. And if there's an industry of only one company dominating, obviously market saturation can be reached extremely fast. And more importantly, if there's no competition, that product will end up stale, which you can put a strong case forward for. That's exactly what happened with Atari. Atari had completely dominated that region before Nintendo, and because no adequate competition came along in time, due to that reason, that market apparently stagnated. We needed Sega to inject their magic into the US gaming market in order to stop that region from stagnating, which is how they saved the gaming industry. They stopped Nintendo's monopoly on the market. And how did they do that? They obviously came in with a much stronger, better product than what Nintendo could offer at the time. The Mega Drive was a powerful 16-bit games console and offered a gaming experience which was far better than what the Nintendo Entertainment System could offer at the time. So for that reason, like the Nintendo Entertainment System had done before it, consumers jumped on that bandwagon, and soon enough Sega had the biggest gaming market share within that region, purely off the basis that the Mega Drive was the best product at the time, just how the NES was the best games console at the time before that, because we're not going to bring microcomputers into this argument quite yet. But actually, maybe I will talk about that a little bit now, because let's look at the Mega Drive over in Europe for a moment. Once again, you can put a strong case for the Mega Drive / Genesis saving the video game industry there, and the lens in which we can look at it that way is the Mega Drive was the first ever games console to truly sell extremely well. Sure, we had the Atari 2600 before that, sure we had Pong consoles as well, but previously that region was dominated by microcomputers. There was a somewhat of a triopoly, I suppose, at the time within my country and many others, between Amstrad, Sinclair, which got bought by Amstrad actually, and the Commodore and Amiga systems. So those microcomputers were all the popular platforms to game on at the time, and the Mega Drive, which was a games console, replaced all of those. That became the primary device to game on for a long time, and as far as I'm aware, the Mega Drive permanently beat Nintendo in that region. It obviously outsold the NES, because as we've discussed, the NES sold terribly, and even after the launch of the Super Nintendo there, it couldn't catch up with what the Mega Drive was offering. So you can put two cases forward for the Mega Drive saving the industry straight away. One, it stopped the complete monopolization of the industry in the United States, and secondly, it became the go-to console in Europe. Previously to that, everyone was gaming on microcomputers, so you can say straight away Sega saved the console industry, just how you can say that Nintendo apparently saved the video game industry in the US, because yes, there was still people gaming regularly, but at the time, as of 1985, many of them would have been gaming on computers themselves, platforms like the Commodore, etc. And on top of that as well, they would have been using their IBM compatibles, and thirdly to that, they were gaming in the arcades as well. To suggest there was no gaming industry at all in the US in 1985 when the NES launched is absolutely outrageous and ridiculous, which is why the saving the video game industry story only makes sense when you look at it through a certain lens, which is why we can basically apply the same logic to the Mega Drive. You can state that saved the industry, as I said, due to the first two reasons. It creating competition for the Nintendo Entertainment System and it being a better product and genuinely pushing gaming forward to the next level, and secondly, becoming a very popular games console in Europe, like none of which we had ever seen previously. Just like I suppose Nintendo had done in the United States before, it was equally as impressive a feat in my opinion. Before I completely close this video off, I just want to talk about the competition factor a little bit more and how important that is. Apart from, like I said, it stopping the market as a whole stagnating, more importantly, it gave developers more choice. No longer were they restricted to just paying out the nose to be allowed to release games on Nintendo platforms. They now had the option to develop games for another successful platform, which meant as a whole, developers had more choice in where they wanted to develop their games. Overall, as I said, forcing Nintendo's hand to up their game somewhat over time. And, like I said, if it wasn't for Sega, who knows what would have happened. Nintendo wouldn't have been forced to force their hand so quickly, and then maybe we wouldn't have seen all the other copycat systems come along, many of which failed, but all in all, it eventually culminated in the release of the Sony PlayStation, another system I could easily argue a case for saving an entire industry. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me know in the comment section if you thought that this little discussion piece made any sense whatsoever, because with these videos I do not script whatsoever. I'm literally just saying what I am thinking. So I'll be really curious to hear in the comment section whether or not you feel that my argument holds just as much gravitas for Sega saving the industry as it does for Nintendo saving the industry, because personally, if I'm really honest, I would not hold either of those companies responsible for saving an industry which in my opinion has never ever had any chance of really going away over the years. In fact, there's only one occasion in all of gaming history where you could put a case forward for games disappearing completely. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is definitely a story I am saving for a future video, when I make a case once again for another system saving the entire industry. And this one certainly holds a lot more gravitas to it than any Sega, Sony or Nintendo platform. Cheerio.